There we go. Well, welcome to everyone. I'm actually going to stop the slide so I can really come full to camera, and then I'll come back to the slide deck in a moment. I just want to say welcome on behalf of Amanda and I. This is such an important topic that's so close to our hearts. And the reason why we're doing this, or perhaps before I say why, I'm making the assumption that everyone watching knows Amanda and I. I'm not going to go in depth into our bios. You can always access those. But we do this as work, not just because it's work, but because it's part of our passion for life and leaving a legacy. And we've both personally gone through midlife. I'm going through it, and Amanda has helped me enormously. So, what we know is when we're heading into new territory, it's really helpful to have a map of some kind. It doesn't mean it's the only route to get to that endpoint, but at least you have some idea of where north or south or east or west is. So, today is a way for us to prepare some kind of map to help you navigate this time and hopefully get through it with getting lost less often. And so today is a session on mind. So we're really going to focus on the genetics and lifestyle that can help with helping us have clarity of mind and creative thinking and better memory and all that good stuff around this 4-pound universe that sits on our shoulders. And then in a month's time, we'll be doing another masterclass like this on emotional well-being and the heart. And then we'll be doing a third one around metabolism. So all things to do with the body and energy and cravings and eating. And we're going to touch on gut health. I mean, there's a lot we can be talking about, as you'll see. We've both got a lot of information to share. We also don't want to make it overwhelming. It's our objective to have some fun. And it's not just about the science. Talking, though, about mind, you can be here in your body, but your mind can be somewhere else in another room. So this is an invitation for you to really be present and to give yourself the present of being present. And perhaps if this is safe for you to do so, I'm not sure, whether you're here live or watching the recording, I invite you to take a moment to connect head, heart, and your body. So your mind, your mood, and your metabolism. And one way to do that is a grounding exercise that I use quite often. So I invite you to soften your gaze, look down, perhaps close your eyes if you're comfortable to do so, and bring your awareness to where your heart is at the back of your sternum in the center of your chest. And notice how your chest rises when you breathe in and how it drops when you breathe out. And bring your awareness to your feet. They may be supported by the floor beneath you. You may be wearing shoes or not. And bring your awareness to your hands. Notice where they might be on the table in front of you, on your lap. And then bring your awareness once again back to where your heart is beating. And I invite you to take the deepest, most nourishing breath you've taken all morning or all day so far. There's many of us joining in from various different time zones. And then as you breathe out, to gently let the light back in if your eyes were closed. Yeah, just a quick grounding exercise to bring us back right here into this place that we're at. Thank you so much for joining. So by the end of today, Amanda and I are going to ask you if there's one thing that you feel you can take and put into practice. So there might be a lot of information. We don't want to overwhelm you. That's the objective. Because if you watch each of these masterclasses and leave with 3 actions that can help benefit your lifestyle, that's a win, right, Amanda? It really is. And why this topic is so important is I know personally Amanda has helped me a lot. When I first did my DNA tests, Amanda, I think you'll remember there were some findings that really helped me manage my insomnia so much. And we're going to be touching on sleep today. So I have a question for you. And if you're able to answer the question in the chat, let me know. Firstly, can you see the slide? I just want to check. Amanda, perhaps give me a thumbs up.
We can see it. Yeah, just make it full screen though.
Oh, have I? Oh, I haven't done that. I'm looking at my. So the question is, why is it not going full screen? I'm going to close it.
Oops.
Slideshow. There we go.
Yeah, do slideshow.
That's right. We're working, right?
No. Oh, there you go. Yep. Now you're good. Yes.
Amazing. So if you can, pop into the chat. On a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with your sleep quality? 5 being amazing. You just sleep perfectly. Everything's fine. And then anything beneath that, there's no right or wrong answer around this. We're really just a bit curious and we're setting the tone. So, scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your sleep quality? 5 being extraordinary. Thank you so much. And Christine, it's amazing to see you here. Welcome, welcome. So, we've got quite a range already: 3, 4 plus, 2.5. All right. 3ish, 2. Oh, you got the gift of sleep. Oh, wonderful. That is a gift indeed. Thank you. 2 more questions. Have you perhaps in the last few days or this week walked into a room and like just forgotten why you were there or what you were going to go and get? Either give me a thumbs up as an emoticon or a yes or a no in the chat. Okay, there we go. Yes, yes. And then in terms of your last meal, so some of you might have just woken up, some of you it's the end of your day, depending on where you are. But if you think about your last meal, did you really savor the meal? Let's say, you sat down without any distractions, no screens, and you spent at least 20 minutes enjoying the flavors and textures. How was your last meal? Did you fully enjoy and savor it without distractions? Also, a yes or a no. Pop that into the chat. Ah, wonderful. We've got lovely. Started with some yeses. Oh, and weekends do make a difference. Absolutely. All right. So this brings in the theme of sleep and rest and the nervous system. And why are we asking these questions? Mostly because our lifestyles today, depending on where we're at, we all have some level of stress, right? And stress will cause the stress response to happen involuntarily. As Amanda and I speak, we'll touch on the fight or flight and the nervous system and vagal tone. Something we know, though, is that we really need to practice relaxation, which is why I started us off with focusing on our breath, because that's one way that we can help the nervous system relax. And I know for myself, the more knowledge I have and the more curious I stay about things, the more empowered I am. And as much as Amanda and I know a lot about this, each of us is unique. So we would like you to always stay curious and open about what's the best thing for you right now, depending on where you are in your life stage. Because if you keep an open mindset, that can help a lot. And don't just believe what we say. We highly recommend that you put things into practice so that you get to experience and let the wisdom and intelligence of your body show you what does work. What we are going through is extraordinary times, and that means we need extraordinary measures around managing our stress. So some of the ideas that we might share, especially towards the end, I've got 5 things that you might not have thought about, or you might know, but common knowledge isn't common practice. And perhaps you could be curious and playful around how you can approach the challenges that we see around midlife. And there are challenges, aren't there? So Amanda, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through the next section.
Thank you. And everyone, just like a tiny bit of a background on Celine and I mean, some of you, I love this slide. Some of you have met Celine and I together, but Celine is based in the United Kingdom, but she's currently in France with her parents. And of course, I'm in the Western US. But Celine and I met in South Africa, actually. But we've been working together for a number of years on work in the United Kingdom and Europe. And we both speak French together. So if you come on a little bit earlier, we would have been chatting in French and chatting with Celine's mom. So it's kind of fun. There's a relationship beyond the relationship. So on that note, I do recognize several friends in the audience. Welcome back, everyone. And for those of you we don't know, welcome. We're delighted that you're here, whatever time zone you're on in the world. And maybe you can share where you are in the world. So Celine does have to change the slides for me, so you'll hear me cueing her. So I'm going to jump in on the science piece, and Celine will actually be picking up some of the observations from the science and telling you how that impacted her, but also pivoting to, okay, now we know this. How are we going to organize that? What can we do with this piece of information in our lives? So I think the most important thing that we all need to recognize is midlife is not just a female thing, people. I think females and women were very vocal about the experience going through midlife. And that's often what I see myself in clinical practice. But I feel that men often are not as vocal about the same challenges they experience. They experience the same low energy. They can experience the same mood swings, the same changes in what is my legacy, self-confidence, motivation, etc. Because humans are all built pretty much the same way. And we all go through an experience where our sex hormones diminish during midlife. So it's not just a female thing. And I know the photo is cliche, but I thought that was fun. We're not just talking about women, people. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, Celine. So 3 things, we're going to touch on 3 major things that happen to your brain in midlife and therefore impact your mind. And then I'll just give a quick nod to 2 others because we're not all scientists here. And those of you who are, just know that I'm not speaking your high-level science language today. We're making this fun. We're explaining things for people who this is not a science. They didn't come here for science. They came here out of curiosity. So the main thing that we know so much about, whether it's in the press, social media, or in our lives, or our spouses told us, is that during midlife, we do often enter a midlife hormonal roller coaster. How many of you have experienced that? How many of you went through midlife, perimenopause, menopause, or andropause, and did not even know you'd gone through it? And I was pretty much one of the latter. I was sort of like, oh, that's what that was. So I didn't really experience a huge roller coaster, but what is actually happening? And this is what really impacts what's going on in our mind, the focus piece, as we're going to get into, the brain fog. It's why we asked you, is that your estrogen and testosterone is swinging around like a roller coaster, up one day, down the next, and all of that not only impacts your brain hormones and hormone production, but it also impacts how you feel. And there's a major reason for that coming right up with a word that Celine will be popping in the chat box for you. But what is interesting to me in this hormonal changes, it usually starts with a decline in progesterone, and that's often sort of declining. We don't even notice it. And so suddenly we say, why aren't I sleeping as well? Because that's hormone sleep, right? We call it vitamin sleep, but it's really a hormone. And hormone changes may start as early as 35. And when I'm talking to fellow practitioners, they'll also say, yeah, younger and younger are women coming into my practice with these early signs of midlife. If you're interested, Sarah Gottfried had a really interesting webinar this week with one of our colleagues, Yale Jaffe. We'll post that in the show notes for you, where she was actually talking about this very fact. So earlier and earlier, or maybe we've missed it. So 3 things. Number 1, roller coaster, midlife hormonal roller coaster. Next slide, Celine. And we're going to talk about what's actually happening structurally. There's good and not so great here, but the great thing is every single thing I'm going to talk about in changes is actionable. So number 1 is actually really positive. As we enter into midlife, the gray matter in your brain, which is really your brain cells and not these long tails that are communication pieces, which I'll talk about in a moment. The gray matter actually goes through a spring cleaning, which is kind of cool. It's almost like if you're in the garden, if you have one and you deadhead the roses, or if you're growing flowers and you like pinch off the deadhead ones, you stop information going to a dead flower head and you can re-push that back into the earth or back to other plants that are thriving. So in the same way, your brain actually goes through some pruning and nips off those neuronal pathways or the pathways in the brain that are no longer serving you, or like, hey, we haven't been down that road for a while, let's cut it off. So it's actually an increase in efficiency. The flip of that, as you can see, is, so that's brain decluttering, but your information highways, which we call your white matter, those roads need a little bit of repaving. So the white matter in your brains is actually your brain cells and the long kind of filaments that are attached to them. We call them axions, A-X-I-O-N-S. So you can probably put that in the chat for you, those of you who don't know this. Those are the critical communication part of brain cells, because they actually fire the communication pieces that you want to get from one brain cell to the next. So can you imagine if those aren't processing or firing efficiently, and we're going to talk a lot more about why in a moment, then you can have a little bit of why am I not connecting the dots? Or where did my memory go into recess? I need to haul it out of a hole. That is where we need to shore up that protective coating. And guess what? We can do it easily through some switches or focus in your diet. Clue: choline and omega-3 fatty acids. Okay. And then, of course, it is true that your memory does shrink or can change over time, but it is all the more reason you're going to hear tips from Celine and your own lives on how you can keep prodding that and activating your memory and remaining curious and doing those crosswords, and get to learn your best friend in memory, B, D, and F, that's coming up at the end of my deck about 20 minutes from now. So the other thing that happens is a little bit of reorganizing in your brain. Like the left brain and the right brain may actually come up to par. Like the daydreaming part actually connects with the strategic planning part, and the mind wandering that you may have done or you may be going through becomes more productive as your brain's like, that was a really good idea when you were doodling and walking around and couldn't focus. That wandering around is in some distant part of your brain. And in midlife, we're able to say, oh, I remember that. It's in my recess. That was a great idea. I can't remember why I can't remember it. And then the other thing that happens is like we become more mature. Well, we used to be really reactive as teenagers, as young people, and early moms and early dads. As I put here, we enter this phase of emotional mastery where road rage gives way to Zen-like calm, mostly. So it's not all like bad news, right? Here's the other two. Cellular aging meets your age. As we do grow older and things do start to wear out, but we can do something about it. Hint here, so much of what we've got to do is not what we're putting on the plate. It's what we're surrounding our lives with. It's the environment that we're living in that actually hugs our genes even more than the food we're eating. So hang on to that piece. So it is true that our cells do show signs of fatigue. Can we change that? Yes. And we call that, like deep down in our cells, mitochondrial fatigue. It's where your brain's power plants feel like they're on a coffee break. Who can relate to that? It's like, what happened? And then you also kind of wake up, and this is sort of fun, that we suddenly realize that, you know what, we've known that kale is good for us. We've known that, all our lives. And we suddenly say, you know what, maybe it's the time where I switch the donuts for kale for brain health, finally. And as many as us have noted, which is why Celine actually asked, how well you're sleeping, counting sheep sometimes becomes an Olympic sport during midlife. And a lot of that has to do with processing stress or what we're exposed to, but also our hormones. And as Sarah Gottfried said, and we'll make sure that webinar is available for you, it's interesting, there is no late time anymore to start hormone replacement if that is for you. And it's a really welcome sign to hear that. It's a choice for men and women, but the literature is now old to say, like, if you need some support from hormones, we feel it's available. This is not a webinar about promoting hormones, but a lot of the issues with sleep are a result or reflection of losing estrogen and or estrogen, as you say in the United Kingdom or around the world, and also progesterone. So that's sort of the structural piece. What about what's happening with your genes, which is really my work? Are your genes throwing a midlife party? And the question is, who are the gate crashers? What mischief are they causing? Should we be sending them to bed without a dessert? Or can we crash their party and restore order? And we can. So let's take a look at 3 mischief makers here. And what I want to do, and actually after we've gone through this, I'm going to have Celine turn off the slide. I'm going to tell a story. And if you have a piece of paper close to you, if we even have that anymore, and a pencil, it's useful for you to write some things down because I'm going to create some imagery for you. The first 3 mystery makers are called PEMT, MTHFT1, and MTHFR. The reason we do not spell everything out is the names are really long, and I wouldn't want you to try and think of pronouncing them, let alone remembering them. So when these gene rebels slack off, you might find yourself wandering around in a mental fog, concentrating like you're trying to read a menu in a dimly lit restaurant, forgetting why you entered the room again, and experiencing mood swings that would make a roller coaster jealous. And the question is why? So on that note, Celine, put me back on full screen. We do actually have slides accompanying this story that I'm going to tell. I'm just going to turn off this other little screen here. So I'm full screen for you. So I'm going to tell a story, and this is where you can make some notes. The slides behind the story you'll get in the slide deck after the webinar. So the first gene, you might want to write this down, is PEMT. What this gene does is it helps the body make a molecule called phosphatidylcholine, and Celine can put that in the chat if you don't know how that's spelled. So phosphatidylcholine. That is really important because it helps your cells stay flexible, the membranes flexible, it helps grease the white matter in your brain. But really, really important to the conversation is phosphatidylcholine. You notice there's the word choline, and choline in the brain is attached to another molecule called acetyl. So you have a molecule called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine helps you focus, helps you concentrate, and it also helps the neurons in your brain fire communication between the two of them. The neurons are how your brain communicates or sends information from one cell to the next, so you can connect the dots and think straight. Well, guess what? One thing, mainly for women and the other for men, is the number one thing that helps fire that gene is estrogen. And guess what happens in midlife for women and men? We lose estrogen. So we're losing a kick in the pants for this gene to do its job. So guess what happens? If the body doesn't make choline, it doesn't necessarily make acetylcholine, it's not getting an impetus or an input from estrogen. And therefore you're like, how do my brain cells fire? Can you connect the dots? So PEMT helps the body do that. With about 50% of people, that gene's a little faulty. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll come in with a dietary strategy coming up in about 5 minutes, or we can actually support that with a supplement. And when people take the supplement like day and night, sometimes brain fog is a choline deficiency. Where are you going to find choline? It's coming right up. So that's PEMT. PEMT works with the other two genes. So the next gene to write down is MTHFD1. Okay, MTHFD1. So what is that gene doing? Well, it's a cousin, it's a sibling with PEMT, the gene you just wrote down. I want you to put a clock on your piece of paper, a big circle, and right at the top of the clock, put a 12, a 9, and a 5. And I'm going to connect this for you. At 12 o'clock, this is where folate, this is vitamin B9 that you can get from food, and it is the best strategy in your life is to get folate from food. It enters into the body, and the body's job is then to convert folate into a form that the body can recognize. So it goes through a number of steps so it can be used. The number one thing that MTHFD1 does in conjunction with the next gene is help the body put folate in a form that it can use. And what the body is doing with that information, here's the big word, Celine, it's helping the body create a molecule called a methyl molecule. Any practitioner sitting in listening right now will tell you this is the number one thing we did not learn in college, university, or school. It's part of a process called methylation. It is probably the number one thing in the body that drives the body that you never learned about. You cannot produce energy in the body without this methyl molecule. You cannot remove toxins without this methyl molecule. You actually cannot break down those brain hormones, dopamine and serotonin, without this molecule. So the body produces this molecule and it sends it to all different places so that the body can do the job that it needs to do. And when you're talking about those sleepless nights or the brain fog or the mood changes or the anxiety that people can often talk about during midlife, oftentimes it's because the body has not produced this key molecule that's needed to help break down the very high levels of those brain hormones. When they're high, you're not sleeping. Talk to anyone who's experienced high dopamine, they'll tell you what that is like. So there's an inefficiency. So MTHFT1, and then which you're going to put at 9 o'clock on your clock, and MTHFR that I want you to put at 5 o'clock, both of those work together to help you to produce a methyl molecule. So what do you think happens if those genes aren't working efficiently? And that happens a lot, particularly with MTHFR. What happens is you have a very slowing down of the getting to that point where the body produces this really important molecule. And your body's looking around for it saying, where's the molecule? Where's the molecule? Guess what that molecule also does? It helps you break down estrogen and testosterone. So one of the things that happens in midlife is your hormones go up and down and up and down and up and down. One of the key molecules to help you break down estrogen and testosterone also requires this methyl group. So what does the body do? It says, oh my gosh, we can't make a methyl group. It looks around for another partner, says, can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help us? And guess which gene it looks to? The very first one you wrote down, PEMT. Because when the body can't use folate in the process, it's going to go over to choline and said, hey, you've got two faces. You can help us make choline, but you can help us make this methyl group. And so you're like, oh, great, we've got a winner. We're going to eat more choline. We can make this critical molecule. But what happens if your body doesn't make choline well? Then you don't even have this as an option or a save. So the thing that you want to take away from here is the body is brilliant. It knows what it needs to make. It can make most of it if you get it through food. Sometimes your genes get in the way, but they'll signal to other genes to pick up the slack. And sometimes that doesn't work efficiently. So Celine, if you want to put the slide back up for me.
Sure, I'm going to put up the
Just
slide.
end my point here.
Yeah.
She just has to, I can't share my slide. We figured that out. So what all this means to the body then, just go back one slide for me, is one, there it is. When these gene workers aren't at their best, it's like your brain city is running on low power. So that's what a lot of people feel, the brain fog. You're not connecting the dots. You don't have that key information. Much of it's from your diet, but also through your genes to help your body make the process of handling your brain hormones efficient. So on that note, what can we do about it? What you can do is give your genes a massage with the food they need. So here's your genes on the left, the PEMT, the MTHFT1 and the MTHFR. And here's the food that gives them a massage that if they're not working efficiently or they need to go and get a massage, these are the foods that either create the workaround or they'll give them a kick in the pants and say, look, wake up, do your job, you know what you need to do. And so this is nutrigenomics. It's using food to steer genes to do the very best for you. So give your genes a massage with the food they need. All right, Celine, I'm going to hand off the massage to you.
Well, I'm moving us out into nature. And as part of the follow-up note, we'll share these resources with you because it's perhaps interesting for you to be able to reference it again. I'm going to change a little bit of tack. We're going to move from food and nutrition to all this happens in our day-to-day routine, right? So we wake up at some point in our lives and we then go about our day. Some of us might be working, some of us not. And because nature is such a powerful lesson or place for us to learn things, I'd like us to reflect on the 4 seasons, and we're going to pay particular attention to one of the seasons. And what do I mean by this is if you overlap the seasons onto a 24-hour day. So what I mean by spring, that is when you become conscious that you're awake, perhaps you have an alarm, maybe the dogs bark, maybe you've got kids in the house, or you wake up naturally. Then once you start with work or activities where the outside world is allowed in through emails or messages or news or social media, that's when you may get pulled down into the stress response and release adrenaline and cortisol and all those things. And then towards the end of the day, once you've worked hard and done what you need to get done and adulted, as I call it, just like now in the Northern Hemisphere, we have the season of, autumn or the fall, where the days are getting shorter and the leaves are changing color. It's so beautiful. So too do we need to slowly wind down until when we get into bed, put our heads on our pillows and want to fall asleep, which that is the season of winter. It's almost as if we're hibernating. And if I saw at the beginning when I asked the question on a scale of 1 to 5, how good is your sleep? I think there were 2 or 3 individuals that were a 4 or above, but a lot of us were like 2.5, 2. I have my own personal story and struggle with sleep, which Amanda helped me understand. It was about 7 years ago when I did one of my first genetic tests, and I had the COMT gene, which we won't speak about today. But I also understood that I have like lots of dopamine in my mind. And so it helped me choose the right strategies. And one of the strategies was how I start my day, not how I end my day. So it wasn't about lavender on my cushion and deep breathing and staying off my devices in a dark room, and all that stuff's helpful. But the changing factor was one that I'm about to share with you. So if we start at the beginning of our day, which is the season of spring, as you wake up in the morning, you're in what we call this hypnagogic state. It's your nervous system is at the most relaxed it's going to be at any time of the day. Also, when you're sleeping, your brain waves drop into theta delta brainwave, which is necessary for deep sleep and REM sleep and memory consolidation. And as you start to wake up, just like the sun rises slowly, gently above the horizon, it doesn't just go whoop, perpendicular. It's not a switch, it's a dial. Our minds and our bodies, and particularly our nervous systems, and the more stressed we are, the more this is important to give us a gradual awakening. And as you go through those brain waves waking up, like right now, we're in what we call beta brainwave because you're concentrating, you're paying attention. Thank you for that, by the way. But when Amanda spoke about how you problem solve or think of a solution when you're doing something like cooking or walking or taking a shower, that's probably, or could be, because your brain waves were in the alpha brainwave, which is when you're waking up in the morning or just before you're falling asleep at night, you're in that magical space of alpha brainwave. So how can you linger more in that state? Because it helps with our nervous system so that we keep those mitochondria alive and well, and we minimize the impact of stress. And one way is to think about, well, what is my spring like? So when you wake up in the morning, do you linger in that lush time where your nervous system and your brain waves are slowly waking up like the rising sun? Or do you pick up your phone before you've even gone to pee? And I know I've done that sometimes, especially when I work and stay in hotels and my phone's my alarm. But we need to manage these devices, because if we don't, they manage us. And a lot of us, a lot of the clients I work with, I do a lot of leadership workshops. And so we speak about this. And a lot of us are checking our phone before we've checked in with ourselves. And so the stress response can start really early in the day. And like Amanda said, the way you manage stress will help you manage your genetic expression more than perhaps even nutrition. So yeah, thank you so much for those of you that are sharing in the chat. I'm keeping my eye there. Because if you don't check in with yourself first, you could actually wake up feeling pretty good. But then you see a post or an email or a message and somebody else needs your attention, or you see something that creates maybe a negative emotion, and then you're not feeling that good. So how can you help yourself to feel good in the morning, besides creating a bit of distance from your device and the news and social media so that you can linger in that very beautiful state? You can also, and this is what changed my relationship with sleep. As soon as you can, this is season dependent, of course, and where you live, but as soon as you can, possibly from waking, spend 15 minutes getting natural light in outside, because even if it's cloudy and overcast, the light coming in through the eyes hits the photochemoreceptors just behind them on the brain. And that helps to regulate melatonin and the circadian rhythm and the cortisol awakening response and all kinds of good things. So spending time in natural light, if you can, and even if you just start with 5 minutes and a cup of tea, and while you're doing that, illumination and inspiration, breathe, wake up your lungs and your heart and take the deepest, most nourishing breaths that you can. When we breathe deeply, I'm going to mention diaphragmatic breathing just before we wrap up. We also activate the vagal tone, which helps to soothe the nervous system. And if you start with like 1 minute in the mornings, maybe 5, it can help practice so that when you need it, when you're very stressed, you're having an argument with someone or you're running late, you're then able to tap back into that. Because before you know it, you're going to get into your busy day. You're going to be in what we call the summer season, buzzing about, getting everything done. And what's very helpful during your day, if you want to help your nervous system and to reduce the impact of stress, is to be aware of your posture and, as I mentioned, your breathing. So I had the wonderful opportunity of going to Japan, and I spent 2 weeks walking with a poet, and we followed in this gorgeous trail of Basho, the first poet to write haikus. And we came across many countless Zen Buddhist temples. And the message was that the most important thing in our practice are our physical posture and our breathing. So I invite you right now, if you're able to, as you take in your next in-breath, elevate your posture slightly. So just lift your head slightly as if there was a string at the top of your skull and I was lifting it. And as you breathe out, think soft front. So relax the tension that you might be carrying around your jaw and your cheeks and your neck and your shoulders, because all this contraction makes it very difficult to breathe deeply and activate the diaphragm. So one more deep breath in, strong back. Exhale, soft front. This concept of strong back, soft front, if it's the one thing you take from today, could be life-changing. It has been for me. And it can take a lifetime to perfect. Because if all this stuff was easy, we would all be doing it, right? It's not. That's why Amanda and I are friends. We remind each other too. And then at the end of your workday, there's going to be a time where we need to wind down. And this is where most of us are not. We're staying constantly stimulated with screens and work. And, you know, many of us have got natural commitments with children and parents. But in those spaces where we might have daydreamed, like Amanda mentioned, we don't allow ourselves to, because we just reach for these devices. And so breaking that connection or giving yourself space to potentially daydream, to get bored, to take a deep breath, takes courage. Takes courage, because most of us will not have felt like we've gotten everything done in our day. So we don't get everything done. And we need to accept that we haven't, but we've done enough. And instead of just trying to clear out the inbox, because it's never going to get cleared, is to pause and take 5 minutes before we maybe move into family mode. It's these little moments that we give ourselves strong permission for that can become powerful, powerful rituals. And we really need to manage the way our nervous systems are constantly bombarded with stimulation. And if we do that, so the spring of our day, the summer, the autumn, or the fall, if we allow for what I call strategic moments of rest, that makes it easier to, when we do go to bed and want to sleep, we're then able to. And so before I hand back over to Amanda to share more about the science, I'm curious if you were to take a deep breath in, and as you think about this for a moment, and if you're happy to share in the chat, which of the 4 seasons that I've just gone through, so which time of day would you like to be stronger in? So which one would you like to have more rest in, or more ability to reduce the impact of stress on your nervous system? Is it spring? So the time when you rise? Is it during your work day, so as you're going about your day? Or is it perhaps your wind down in the evenings? Or maybe you want to be able to sleep longer and have better quality sleep. Oh, thank you. It's nice to see the variety. Yeah, I think it's harder to manage the fall because we've been in full swing all day. Well, some of the strategies I'm going to end with may help you around that. Yeah, Stan, I agree. My springs are very important. If I get that right, I'm just unstoppable that day. Thank you. Thank you. So Amanda, over to you again to help us a bit more.
And, you know, for me, I mean, I've learned so much from Celine. It's, and I think that the major word, I think, in our lives is to remain curious. And my power phrase, this more power, you know, that I looked at is today was, I learn from patterns in my life, and I am happy to change them without regret. at all. And one of the reason I mentioned that, and I have to think, Celine, spring is your time, right? That's what I'm thinking, because I'm normally connecting with you. My spring, which is your fall because of time zones, but spring has become really important to me. And I put in the chat that I actually learned from Celine, and I will not look at my phone other than sometimes I'll check WhatsApp because of global time zones for things. But that is the only thing I'll look at before 7 minutes after 7 or 8 minutes after 8. I'm up to 9 minutes after 9. Obviously, if you have kids or what have you, you're looking after elders, there's emergencies we have to look. But getting rid of that consternation in the morning, it is, right, Susan, spring is a game changer, is so critical because it sets you up for the day. And that is my time. So I just want to speak very emotionally about it, that spring is my time. It's the time I'm with my dog, or I'm doing qigong, or I'm getting that light. I'm inspired by where I live, or I'm on a yoga mat. That is my time, and nobody's allowed to take it away from me. I think the other important thing is fall. I think Kim had mentioned, and Michelle too, fall. Many of us work later, we're listening, we're learning, it's like the 24-hour day. When you stop the computer, I hit a yoga mat. I just do. Even if it's 10 minutes, or I'll do qigong. It is my time again. And the reason I'm saying that is, as I go into this next piece, and we're just going to go on to the last two genes for me, is that they are so, number one, they are so influenced by our environment. Number two, I've worked with Celine for about 5 years with executives in the United Kingdom. And to this day, when Celine's presenting, which she does all the time around actually Europe and the United Kingdom, she said the number one thing that I hear from my audience is help me manage my stress and help me get sleep, where several don't even sleep. And so we can eat and do the gourmet food and be with our friends, and love our animals. But if we don't control the inputs, all bets are off. And nothing has been more revelatory in my life, but to see how impacted my own clientele. I spent 25% of my time still clinically, because I work in genomics, seeing individuals. Once we figure out the inputs, the stress pieces, everything else falls in line. And I know we hear this, but I know, working in genetics, that I can do the best food and give you, everything's perfect, get the exercise worked out. But if we don't do the stress and we don't do the sleep, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but I can't emphasize that enough. So give yourself your spring, your summer, your fall, so you've got winter to regroup. So just real quick here, in 5 minutes, I want you to meet two incredible genes, BDNF and FKBP5. And again, we're just going to spell them out like that. We call them the midlife's brain duo of drama. Your brain's yoga. How do you feel the impact of these? Your brain's yoga class gets canceled. It's like, and that goes back to, I can't get into the recess of my brain. Why am I not as sharp as I was? Stress feels like a never-ending Monday. Your thinking is as clear as a foggy windshield. Can we relate? Yes, it's hormonal, but yes, it's stress, people. Your mood swings are like a pendulum, and your brain starts acting its age and forgets where it's put its eternal youth potion. Like, what happened? The question is why. So let's take a look at why. Probably the most important gene, and you're going to meet this again when we get into mood, because mind and mood are they come together. You can't separate them, because what's happening in the mind, or how your genes are manipulating things in your mind, will affect your mood. But you want to think, that should say BDNF, not BNDS. So BDNF, it stands for brain derived neurotropic factor, brain derived. So BD, brain derived. It's your brain's personal trainer. And it is so actionable by your lifestyle. It keeps your brain cells fit and healthy. One of the major things it does, two major things, it helps you repair and maintain those critical neurons, which are your information firing squads. If they are not healthy, and you need choline for that, by the way, if they're not healthy, they cannot fire information and they can't receive information. So BDNF is critical for their integrity. It also helps you build new ones as well. So it's a builder, a maintainer, and a doer. So it's pretty important. It's like, outside of eating folate, getting folate and choline into your body, This gene and how we work with it is foundational. Foundational. It also helps you want to think of like a tree. Think of your brain like a tree. It helps you grow new branches in your brain. So infiltrating your brain, paves new highways in your brain where your body can take those thoughts and store them. And when you need them, it pulls them back. So we call this process neuroplasticity. That's called growing these new branches or roads or lanes, highways in your brain. The other thing that BDNF does brilliantly, and I'm going to talk about this in mood, is it actually helps activate and deactivate serotonin, which is how you feel good about yourself, and dopamine, which is how you stay motivated and you're able to stop being motivated when you don't need to. In other words, that risk reward phenomenon, it's like you went out, you had a great time. Now it's time for downtime. So BDNF is really, really important in what we call that balance. And so it helps your brain adapt to change, create change. And it does teach old dogs new tricks. So that's BDNF. FKBP5, this is a gene which you can call your brain's stress thermostat. And it's like put here, it acts like a sensitivity dial to your stress response. And the way, so it's out there monitoring. And if the stress is high, if you're not in winter, you're in winter, but you can't sleep, it's probably because this thermostat gene has said, wait a minute, this person's stressed. Let's release cortisol so your body's got the energy and the hormones to react to stress. And look at the note here. It can become even more overactive as we age. And as we age, especially in midlife, when it's overactive, it's harder to turn off. And one of the only ways to turn this off is to manage the input. So if you're feeling more overwhelmed or anxious, if you're feeling that you can't control your stress as well and it's harder to bounce back, if you're in that irritability, mood swing space, or if you're kind of up and down every day and you feel like, why am I so anxious? Why do I go from the height of feeling great to the heights of down in the dump? This gene, along with BDNF, is why they're called the drama duo maybe at play. And a note here, the childhood trauma can deeply impact whether the thermostat with its radar is up all the time. So it always means we have to be well, we have to deal with that which came before. So I'm actually going to point out three things in this slide, and then we're going to go to what are you going to do? What can you do? So you will have these slides. Once again, you can massage these genes through food, but FKBP5 is as much about lifestyle as about food. So if I were to highlight two things, you'll have to do it for me, Celine. BDNF, one of the best nutrients to massage BDNF is omega-3 fatty acids, your fatty foods. It loves the information for omega-3 fatty acids. It what stimulates this gene, as does food that's rich in zinc. Zinc, FBP, the zinc is also shared by FKBP5. So we can just highlight that. So if you want to massage these genes, to look at the food sources that help deliver the nutrient information that these genes need. But let's go to the last slide from me, Celine. But you cannot control FKBP5 without controlling the environment. That's number one. Number two, with BDNF, the number one thing that helps this gene be the best that it can be is exercise, which also helps control stress. So if you look at all the science, even though I said, hey, omega-3s and zinc, that's how you massage the gene through food. The best way to massage this gene is to move. And if you want to think about what's the best source of exercise, is getting your heart rate up. We're not going to get deep into different forms of exercise today, and doing a little bit of interval training. Here, HIIT means high intensity interval training. I say just move and step it up a little bit if you can, and then bring it back. You don't need to join a gym. You don't need to be bouncing up and down and being out of breath. Moving equals boosting BDNF, and so does sleeping. And on that note, let me hand that back to you, Celine. We can talk more about this in a chat later.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you.
All right.
The message is come across that there's so much we can do in our lifestyles, right? Around diet, around exercise, spending time in nature. I just wanted to end off with a few. Some of these are really practical, right? Like you might know these and you might think, great, but are you putting them into practice? And if you maybe know about these, or if today you learn something, can you share this? Because the more we talk about this, the better. We aren't taught these things in school, so we often have to learn them. Sometimes once we're unfortunately ill, you know. And in this case, I know some of you are clinician based, so you know a lot about the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagal tone and the vagus nerve. And some of you may not. But basically, in this case, when we're talking about vagal tone or the vagus nerve, it's not about what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, because what happens in your vagus tone does not stay in Vegas. It impacts your whole body for the better. So it's important to try and activate this nerve, which runs. The word vagus means wandering in Latin. So it wanders throughout the body, particularly through the thorax and your chest, which is why when you do these 5 things that I'm going to talk about, because it comes from the skull down through the throat, across the collarbones. In fact, the one thing I haven't included, you might have noticed if you're feeling a bit nervous or tired or stressed, that you rub here. I don't know if you do that, but I do sometimes. We naturally touch this part just beneath our shoulders because it's soothing. And that's because part of the vagal nerve actually goes there. So if you'd like to, you can just perhaps just massage your collarbones as I speak, because these are the things we can bring into our day. So we don't need to go take a half a day and go to a spa or go to an ashram in India. I mean, we can't do that. We need to find techniques that we can implement into our busy schedules and lifestyles. And the one thing, if you are not already curious about the ability for you to breathe better, I would really encourage you to bring that on. It's free. You don't have to pay subscription. It's always there. And there's so much evidence to show that when we breathe better, it's almost like you're saying, hey, let's slow down the whole stress response. Let's take the scenic route. So how is your breathing? We have about 6 minutes together until we close. We'll stay on if anybody wants to stay and ask us questions. But I encourage you to remember that breathing technique that I just shared. As you inhale, strong back. That helps you with your posture. And then as you exhale, soft front. And even if you're not sure how this works, you don't have to get it right. Sometimes just the idea, the imagination is very powerful for the mind to release some of the tension that we hold in our musculature because of the stress response. So this is number 1 of 5, is practicing deeper, slower breathing. The next one, if you take a look at the picture, I wonder if you can guess what it might be. Oh, well, actually, I have the word there. It's a hummingbird. Because humming is good for us because it causes vibrations and frequencies that then rub against the vagal tone and nerve. If you've had babies or children that you've put to bed, you'll know that by singing them a lullaby and humming, we can relax them. There's a big movement towards using sound therapy and healing frequencies. So I know this might sound weird, but depending where you are right now, hum with me and see how you feel in 30 seconds when we're finished. Let's choose a song that most of us will know. Happy birthday to yourself. So whatever your name is, and you're going to hum, right? So you don't need to know the lyrics. You can't be off tune. And if you can, join me. Gosh, I can feel that. I'm actually slightly lightheaded. So like I said at the start, try these new ideas. Don't just assume that they may not work, because you might be pleasantly surprised. The other one, number 3, is cold water exposure. So if you are somebody who is on the call, who is taking maybe cold showers or doing any of that because you've come across maybe Wim Hof, there's so much research to show too that can be quite powerful in helping not only with mental health, but in activating a positive response in the nervous system. And also splashing cold water in your face, it activates what we call the dive reflex, which can help also with the vagal tone. And then gargling is another one. So I've been gargling quite a bit recently because I had a throat infection in July. And I forgot how important and useful it is. You know, these old remedies that often in our modern lives we forget about. So salt water and gargling. I'm also doing a saline rinse in my sinuses. And by the way, humming and gargling are very good if you struggle with sinuses. So I know a lot of people in the UK struggle with that. And maybe next time you brush your teeth, perhaps do 30 seconds is enough. 30 seconds to 1 minute of gargling also creates some vibration in your throat and upper chest that can help activate the vagal tone, which is good. And then number 5 is what we started off with. So right at the start of the call, if you were here early or on time, we asked the question, what has made you smile today? Oh my gosh, if we allow ourselves to smile more, to feel gratitude, to experience what we call joy spotting, so noticing things that make us happy, we can stimulate all kinds of positive outcomes like oxytocin and dopamine and all those good things. And so, out of what I've just shared, is there one that you're curious about that you might put into practice? Is it paying more attention to the way that you breathe? Is it humming? Is it maybe some cold water exposure or gargling? Maybe more joy spotting and smiling more? And feel free to pop it into the chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, because the theory can stay theory, but ultimately, we'd like you to take action and take something, just one thing. So maybe it's what you just shared now. But what is one thing that you can take from your time and your investment of energy to make this helpful? Because Amanda and I are here to guide you. Amanda's going to share in a moment just to remind you about the upcoming classes, but it doesn't have to be complicated. So pick one thing and then share it with others so that we can all help each other, because a rising tide raises all boats, right? Thank you so much for those shares in the chat. Amanda, would you like to wrap us up? Where to from here?
Let's put us back on full screen. Oh, thank you. Okay, let's chat this, and I'm going to just share a little. No, in fact, I'm going to share it right now. I think of my father, who is deceased, but I grew up in the UK, and actually where Celine recently moved, but she lived just around the corner from where my folks live, which is so cool in the United Kingdom, where my brother actually lives now. But my dad, every day of my life when I was living at home, before I went to university, he would get up first thing in the morning when the sun rose. He'd make a cup of tea and he'd head to the garden, whistling or humming. And he'd inspect the garden, whether there was anything in the garden or not. But that was part of his thing, that was part of his sunrise. So it's just a wonderful memory, to think of our parents and what we do. So thank you everyone for being with us. I know it was kind of a whistle stop tour, but what I love when I listen to Celine present is the practical application of what we see, what I'm seeing when I look at genes and all the patterns and how they respond. And again, so much of the way they respond, and I reminded this every day I unpack DNA, it is what you do in your life. It is the environment that you surround your genes with. Some of it is food, but a lot of it is our life that is so important. And I think what has become so destructive to our genes and to our health is this constantly in the on position. There's constantly a screen. You can't go into a store. You can't put gasoline or petrol in your car or plug something in without there being a screen. You can't walk through an airport, right? It is everywhere. And so that spring, summer, fall, winter piece is so important for you to say, which part of the day do I need to focus in on? And what is my strategy? And breathing is, there's many strategies, right? But that breath work piece, which sounds so woo, right? But it's just time for you, is so critical, because you can't calm your spirit, which is your essence, if you don't do that. You're always out here, right? And actually, in the end, I guess our goal in life is to tend to our very essence, which is our spirit. And that gets lost in this whole world. So all that being said, and we can chat more about this, anyone who wants to stay on for about 10 minutes, we're going to be around, is this class, which we so appreciate you joining, is 1 of 3. is focused around the midlife experience, right? That can be 35 to 65 or beyond. No age limits, right? But that's our focus. Today was about mind. The mind is deeply entangled with mood, which we'll be unpacking in our next class. That's in October. And then we'll move to metabolism. So it's the 3 M's. So you're welcome. Please join us again for our next class. What was the date of that, Celine? Just pop back.
23rd of October.
23rd of October. And then we have another one in November. You will receive an email from us with a recording for this series and all the slides that we showed you. So you can take a look and slow things down. If you have registered for all three, we'll be happy to see you next month. If you haven't, just go back and we'll put the link in your email. Just go back and join us again. It's going to be the same casual format. What did we see when we look at how you built? That's your blueprint. And what can you do about it? What's actionable? Because everything we're talking about is actionable. You're not stuck. No one's stuck. So on that note, Celine, any parting words, or can we open it up for a chat?
Yeah,
Anyone who
yeah,
wants to
share.
chit chat with us, open up your video if you want to.
Yeah, just how much this has really helped me in terms of understanding myself, because you can be empowered with knowledge or just have knowledge that doesn't empower you. And just thank you for being here. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again. I'm going to pause the recording and then we'll stay on if anybody wants to chat or ask questions that you don't feel like that's going to be on the recording.
Yeah, yeah.